Your life experience, good or bad, is a gift when you share it with others. At Taxi Chronicles, we allow real riders with real stories to share their gift. So hopefully this episode will intrigue, enhance or inspire you. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we're going to be honoured to hear the ins and outs of what it's like working in a prison within London. We shall remove the name of the prison for obvious reason. And we're just going to hear from a rider, Bob, so everybody knows it's anonymous time, and he's going to tell us how he got into the job, what it's like working in a job, and just take it from there. So nice to have you here today, Bob. Just grab that, that's the microphone.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So Bob, how did you come to work in the prisons, and how long have you been doing it?
Well, it was about 20 years ago. I answered an advert online that looked like really good for a job, and then they asked me to do like sort of an open walk-in at the prison I went to work at. So I walked around, had a look, and I was out of work at the time, so it seemed like a good idea. At first, to be honest with you, the first 6 months were hard work, and it was a little bit different to what I was used to, because I wasn't used to that sort of environment. But I kind of fell into it, and I've now been there 20 years.
What was you said at first it was quite hard. What was hard?
Well, it's dealing with people that don't necessarily like you straight away, if that makes sense. I mean, beforehand I'd kind of worked sort of all around sort of different, like Spain, Magaluf, and doing bar work.
Okay.
Where people were kind of happy to see you, and all of a sudden you're walking into an environment where people don't really like you, and there's no real reason they don't like you. It's just because of you're one side of the fence and they're the other, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like a tribalism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then they find there's no real reason they dislike you, so after a while you end up building a bond with people, and you end up getting on with most people there.
Oh, is it?
But at first it's just literally because you're wearing black and white and they're wearing a tracksuit, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. So, how did you actually overcome that they're not liking you?
To be honest with you, at first I just literally, I suppose, shut myself off to it, because I had a lot of that with the staff I worked with as well.
Really?
Because I mean, if I hadn't been there as long as some of them, so they wouldn't talk to you because they didn't think that you were worthy of talking to, because you hadn't been in the job that long.
It's a bit like the military, and they think you're pond like.
Yeah, very much
scum.
like, yeah, exactly like that. They looked at it very cliquey. It was a very cliquey sort of organisation when I first joined it, where they, as I say, they wouldn't talk to the brand new staff. And I mean, at first I found that hard work, but I kind of felt, well, I needed the job. So I just literally just dealt with it, and in the end I'd sort of end up turning off and not bothering to talk to the other staff. After a while that all breaks down and people end up start talking to you.
Do you think there's part of it that it may be because they're not sure if you're going to do the distance?
It's probably that, and I also felt at the time it's the trust issue as well. They don't know who you are really, you've not built that bond up with them. They don't know if they can rely on you if trouble goes off. And it's getting. I think some of it was about trust, because I think most of the officers have been there like 15, 20, 25 years.
So
whereas, yeah, someone like myself had just walked in and been there like 2 days. I guess it was different for them as well.
So you are a strong character then?
Yeah, well, I think it made me a strong character. I mean, I wasn't at first. I was quite lacking in confidence, to be honest with you, but I think being thrown in the deep end and basically told to swim or drown kind of helped build that confidence and character in me.
Yeah, because if everybody's against you...
Well, that's it. You've just got to... I mean, I just had to look at the fact that I have to deal with these people. I just have to crack on with it, really.
Okay. That's interesting.
It is very different nowadays, though. People are a lot more friendly. A lot of the older... We used to call them the dinosaurs. They've gone now. They've moved on. They've all retired, and see, you've got a completely different environment in there now.
I've interviewed 2 other prison wardens. Is that the right term? I'm not sure.
Prison officer,
Officers. And they said they were very young.
Yeah.
Early 20s. I mean, really early.
Yeah,
20s.
we do have a lot of that there.
And one of them, she knew quite a few of the prisoners personally because they're from the same council estate as her, which I found was very interesting. But she seemed to handle it very well.
It can happen. I mean, I grew up in Lewisham, and over the years I've bumped into lots of people. I even bumped into an ex-girlfriend who was coming into the visits hall to visit her new boyfriend. So it does happen.
And how do you deal with that? Because I assume those people are going to try and say, "Oh, I can't do me a favour."
Well, you have to make it obvious to security there, so that way you can't be put in a position of manipulation, or sort of you can't be put in any position then.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I mean, I had a friend who worked in immigration.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't deal with people coming from your country.
Exactly. It's sort of almost like that. But if there's someone, say, like you went to school with, because there was a couple of people I went to school with, and I made like sort of the internal security aware of it, so that they knew that I couldn't be put in any position. I was kept away from that certain wings that they were on, so that nothing could interact. I mean, nothing ever did come of it, but I mean, unfortunately, growing up living in London, it is kind of it's a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, I understand. If you could change anything about the whole prison system, what would you change?
See, that's a tough one, really, because there's a few things that probably need changing.
I'll name them.
I think really there needs to be more understanding of why people sometimes break the law. Also, there needs to be more understanding of how and when we're releasing people, because when we release people, sometimes it's not just down to us, it's down to the housing. They release them back into the same area where they've committed the crime. And some of them will say they don't want to go back to that area because they know they'll just get back into that life. So there's a few things like that need to be sort of addressed, but we have actually changed a lot. I mean, just in the 20 years, I mean 20 years is quite a while, just the time since I've been there, it has changed dramatically.
How so?
I mean, well, I think originally it was seen, a lot of the institutes were seen as quite racist.
Okay.
We've changed a lot of that around now. And I like to think we've changed that. Well, I like to think we've done 100% change there, but of course you're never going to get rid of all of that.
So, how were they racist before, and what has been changed?
Well, I mean, it used to say like travellers wouldn't survive that long in certain prisons, and you had sort of
What, as in they would die, or they?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of Irish people did seem to struggle in prisons at first, sort of, especially in London, I guess, because of, I mean, probably the IRA gave them a lot of stigma. I guess they struggled there. That's one of the stories I always hear. I mean, I never dealt with that myself. Mm-hmm. When I joined, it was, I mean, the prison I was at had a dramatic change around, because the prison I was at one point seen as institutionally racist just before I joined it, and it was actually condemned. But we've now become probably the most diverse prison, I would say, in the country. But it was also the fact of a lot of the officers would be from a white background, and I guess that created a bit of resentment there as well.
The dinosaur era as well.
Yeah, the dinosaur era, and people thought they could call people names that they shouldn't be calling them. And I suppose you had that sort of, that archaic bit of racism in people.
Which brings on to the case of rehabilitation. That if you're insulting people, you're not really...
Yeah, you're not going to rehabilitate them, no.
Not really, because you're still keeping them in that angry zone.
No, of course you are. And you're not really respecting people. To rehabilitate, I think you need to have some sort of respect for people. I mean, because at the end of the day, sometimes it could be a simple mistake that could see us on the other side of the wall.
Where you said the travellers didn't really make it, were they committing suicide? Were they being...
We had a lot that commit... Well, I say we, I wasn't there at the time, but there was a lot that committed suicide. And that's one of the stories I had. And I always remembered that travellers would always say, oh, well, I won't last in a London prison. They had this whole thing that they wouldn't last in there.
Okay. Well, have you only ever worked in London prisons?
Yeah, no, I've 20 years in the same prison.
Okay, I suppose, yeah, familiarity.
Yeah, I mean, I have thought of other places, but I think when you spend somewhere so long, you get too comfortable there, really.
You know how everything goes.
No, exactly.
And do you see the same criminals coming in, going out, coming in?
You used to quite a lot. You used to see the same ones time and time again, and they would come back and they would say, I won't be back again, I won't be back again. Then you see them a year later. I mean, the sad thing I always used to remember, when I first got there would be like prisoners that you would end up talking to, and they were fit and healthy, and then you'd see them about 5-6 years later, and obviously they've got a drug habit because they've all of a sudden they're skinny and there's not much of them anymore, which was always quite sad to see. But yeah, unfortunately you did used to see and do still see quite a lot of the same people coming back.
Do they get their drug habit because of being in jail, or?
I guess that's probably 50-50, because I mean you've got people that come in with drug habits, but then you've also got the stories you hear about people that will come in clean and then leave with a drug habit. Out of boredom, they'll be smoking something, and that, like, you've got this spice nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
They'll try and find that in there because it's people just looking for something to try and pass the time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, I believe, inside is boredom. Especially more so this last sort of year, 18 months when we've had this lockdown. But then again, a lot of that's been restricted because there's not so much coming and goings in prisons at the moment.
Oh, is it?
Well, yeah, because of the lockdown, we've not had so many different visitors. Visits have been sort of... there hasn't been really visits of such for the last year.
And crime probably went down as people weren't outside.
Yeah, crime has gone down. It's gone down quite a bit, really, I guess.
Regarding rehabilitation, do you believe there's certain people who can't be rehabilitated?
Yes.
And do you believe in capital punishment for certain crimes?
I don't know. I mean, that's always a sticking point, isn't it, capital punishment? I mean, there's certain things we look at people and think, we know what, the crime they've done is so diabolical that we would think that, yeah. But then I also think sometimes, who are we to sometimes make that judgment as human beings? Okay.
I'm a fan of capital punishment for paedophiles. And when I mean paedophiles, I mean those people who've touched, someone who's like under 10 kind of thing, without a shadow of a doubt. Someone who's just got no capability of protecting themselves. I don't think there's no second chances for that.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have to be God to take their life.
No, you're right.
In that respect, I've had a debate with a lawyer before.
No, of course, no, I get that.
She's telling me different, but I just seen your point of view as a person who works in the prison facility and meets many people day in, day out and stuff. You know of all the crimes that the people do in there.
I have access. I can find that out. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, most of the time, to be honest with you, I choose not to. Because I don't want to be. I suppose I don't want to be someone that ends up treating someone differently because of what they might have done. I know there's certain areas where the paedophiles are, but I mean, with everyone else, I don't want to be judging people. If someone's sort of mugged an old lady, say, or someone's done, I don't want to judge people any differently. It just makes your job a little bit harder sometimes if you go in there with a downer on this particular person. And then again, it's like you say, the rehabilitation. If you're going there with a downer on a particular person because of a crime he might have committed, you're not really giving him a second chance.
Yeah, and your job is just to, in essence, to protect him.
Yeah, I mean, my job's not to punish them, really. My job's just to keep the peace in there and sort of keep it all running okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. What would you say you've learned that you wish you knew when you'd started?
Probably understanding of people, different people from different walks of life, and I suppose just being able to talk to people rationally. I think it's a job like this that makes you have to talk to people rationally, because if you're going on an argument level, it's never gonna achieve nothing.
How is confrontation dealt with in the place?
confrontation is dealt with sometimes with confrontation, but I mean, a lot of us try and de-escalate it from with communication. I always think communication is the better key, really. I mean, last resort is when you have to become physical with someone. That's how I've looked at it. I suppose I've looked at it for 20 years and I've got through fine like that.
And you've never been injured or anything like that?
No, I've had no issues like that, no.
Okay, so I used to do security in the nightclub doors.
Yeah.
And I've been in the military, obviously, where you deal with hostile people. And I always say it's your body language and what you say which decides whether you're going to have to be physical with people or somebody in that respect of things. So what does the future hold for you?
I suppose another 10, 12 years where I am, and hopefully retire a quiet life. Hopefully anyway, unless the government change the age limits again for retirement.
Okay, well, yeah, at least.
But yeah, not a huge amount. I don't have a huge amount of ideas. I'm quite happy doing what I do.
And to become a prison officer, what's the criteria? What do you have to do?
It's completing tests, really. Online they can complete those tests. I mean, again, the system's changed since I joined. When I joined, it was 2 tests. Now I'm told it is a little bit harder. And they can gain NVQs out of it, I'm told.
Yeah, that would have made sense, yeah.
I'm not sure the fully testing system now, but I know that they're recruiting. They're recruiting like mad at the moment because they're short-staffed.
Is it? Are you on a private company or are you with the government?
No, with the government.
So I heard that quite a few prisons are private companies.
They were going private company, but then I think they realised that it was G4 that took a lot of them on, wasn't really
effective.
Yeah, it wasn't really achieving a huge amount. So a lot of it went back to the prisons.
That makes sense. It's like the dustman. There's no point having certain jobs of providing services for
exactly.
Private. They're trying to make money and they're not trying to.
Because we was all concerned, I think, back in 2013 of this prison being sold off, that prison being stuff, and then you kind of realise it's not quite as simple as that. And a lot of the private companies, they want brand new prisons. They don't want London prisons are too old. London prisons are sort of going on 150, 200 years. Yeah. And
so U value has gone out the window.
Exactly. All they want is brand new, where they have electric doors, they can press buttons and
no sliding gates.
Exactly.
And stuff like that. Okay, that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Well, thanks a lot for that.
That's not a problem.
It's been very informative. My last question to you is, what would you say to your 16-year-old self?
My 16-year-old self, I'll probably tell a lot to. Really, I'd probably say, don't marry the woman I'm married, and go with the idea of going to New Zealand. That's where I could have been now.
But you can still go there on holiday.
No, of course I can. I think hindsight's quite good, though, isn't it? When we look back and think, if I hadn't done this, or if I could tell my 16-year-old self, pay more attention at school and such like.
I hear you. Did you lose a house in the marriage?
We kind of
then I can say, I
lost quite a bit out of it, really.
Okay. But all right, thanks a lot.
Not a problem, thank you.
And we wish you well.
Thanks.
We hope you liked that Taxi Chronicles interview. Don't forget to share and subscribe to get the latest episode. Ever considered investing in a continent with the fastest growing economies and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources. Listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. British Standard Time.